Next up, we have Chad Walker, who will be discussing micro innovation, how small ideas become big industry shifts. I will be welcoming him up to the stage. Just a little bit about him. Chad F. Walter joined Paperclip in June of 2022 and serves as the Chief Revenue Officer. Chad led the launch of the Paperclip Safe solution and oversees Paperclip sales and marketing initiatives through strategic growth, sales development, and new client acquisition. Prior to joining Paperclip, Chad was the VP of Sales and Marketing at IGI Cybersecurity, the VP of Business Development at Gray Castle Security, and the founder of CF Walter Consulting. Chad has worked in various leadership roles with cybersecurity, technology, and globalization for more than 20 years. Let's give him a round of applause as we welcome him up to the stage.
Chat EO or optimization, chat engine optimization, something of that nature. Since it is shifting. Actually, I handle marketing for for Paperclip. As we're talking about this, we have this ongoing conversation, and I'm trying to. It's a 35-year-old company trying to get the senior leadership that has been there since the foundation to move beyond classic SEO and understand that chat plays a different game. AI plays a different game. Um, yeah, yeah. Search engine optimization has become more search phrase. It was going that way anyways, but yeah. In writing, I write a lot of content, so there we go. We are here. So, all right. Without further ado, I know you guys were waiting here. So we're going to talk about micro innovation, how small ideas become big industry shifts. Actually, that last presentation was loaded with micro innovation and concepts. So as mentioned, my name is Chad Walter. I'm the chief revenue officer. I'm a nasty sales guy. Get that right on the table. Chief revenue officer of Paperclip. And I've been with Paperclip for about 4 years. Prior to that, my background is in cybersecurity strategy. I've done incident response, pen test. Incident response is my favorite, not so much, but pen testing, innovated CISO opportunities or CISO roles into a virtual CISO, and I go back to the days of managed firewalls. I don't know if you guys ever remember that. That was like first MSSP type stuff right there. Firewall rules, my favorite topic to talk about. So today I'm honored to have the ability to talk about thoughts around the power of micro innovation. Let's see. I was told there's no secret. Just keep clicking. Can you advance the slide from back there? That's fine. If you can advance it from back there, I'm good with that. Um, there we go. Cool. So first of all, let's establish what we mean by micro innovation. So I put the definition up there. I stole that from ChatGPT early this morning. But micro innovation is the practice of making small targeted improvements to an existing product, process, workflow, or capability that can create meaningful value over time. It's a mouthful right there, but it's really about looking at processes and procedures and technology and finding those gaps in those processes and making tweaks, making changes, and some of those changes become product. But it is different than the innovation. Macro innovation is really looking at the big picture, those big ideas, like open AI. That's a macro innovation. That's a game changer, very disruptive, and definitely impacts. But it also becomes a foundation for a lot of micro innovation, that those tweaks. And so we're seeing that right now. We're seeing a huge cottage industry of startups. I think in the panel discussion I led on Tuesday, we talked about regarding AI and supremacy and things of that nature. There was a mention about there's like a 235% increase of new .coms, new domain names since the this massive AI adoption phase, generative AI adoption phase. Make sure I get that clear. But that's largely people kicking off startups that are building this giggy economy is becoming real. I think we played around with it in the COVID timeframe, but So representing these incremental improvements in technology, and it's important to also understand that some micro innovation does become disruptive, and I'm going to get into that in just a second here because I'm going to go down a little bit of a journey as since you guys get stuck with just me. Lucky you. But we're going to talk about. Could you advance slide? Thank you. So we're gonna introduce paperclip into this conversation just to give example of where we talk about micro. So paperclip is a 35-year-old company. I joined them because of their longevity and their innovative capabilities. So they're a 35-year-old innovations company, and yes, not so long ago, someone looked at me and it's like, how can you still call yourself an innovations company when you're 35 years old? Well, I don't know. Microsoft does a good job at it. Um, but but no, it's an innovations company, and we're largely embedded in the financial services space. That's where we've been. 9 of the top 10 life insurance and annuity companies run on a backbone that is our product or our services, our service portfolio. Now, where that becomes a micro conversation is every one of our services. When we start with virtual client folder and we go back to 1991 and we look at what was going on at that point. So at that point, digitization was a brand new thing. Document management was a key phrase. Everyone was doing and trying to improve their document management, but we had HIPAA had taken place, and that was about moving that document management to the digital space. And so and the whole purpose of moving to digital space is to make records more available. I've spoken about HIPAA quite often, and I'm not in the healthcare room, but I still argue, we're not. I can't go to one practice to the other and have them see my document. No sharing is happening, but that's my sarcasm. But that was the whole purpose, is this digitization. So that's what the company was originally founded on, was this gap, and how do we make this more efficient? How do we get the data in a digital space? And it wasn't actually about access. It was about monetization. Let's cut to the chase. How do we get more out of the data? Because on paper, it's terrible to actually monetize. It also comes with security loopholes and things of that nature. But so that's where we started, was that small innovation, which became our virtual client folder solution. We still do that today, and within that, there's been a series of additional micro innovations, because as you develop products and you listen to your customers, they give you feedback, and the world has changed. That solution now sits on an AI backbone. I'm going to say machine learning. People cringe when I use machine learning and AI in the same sentence now. But how do you train the AI if you don't have machine learning in there? But so it sits on that. It's evolved, and it's going to continue to evolve based on that feedback. Little micro innovations that continue to add to that. That led to our Internet Express solution, and this is very simple. This is how micro innovation impacts. So Internet Express is named Internet Express because it basically replaced FedEx for our clients. Our clients were spending a ton of money on FedEx, and FedEx is actually slow in an age where things need to be immediate. Immediate reporting, immediate decisions on documentations, immediate. You stick it in FedEx and you overnight it. That's 24 hours. That's not immediate. So that was the challenge that came up. So and actually our COO, who's been with us for 30 years, he said, I remember him sitting down. He's like, Chad, it's really this simple. It's not real complex. It's they needed the data now, and we had this thing called the internet. Can you believe that? This thing called the internet. Why aren't we using the internet? And so that's how Internet Express was built. We got into encryption with CMail, and this is another one that's a challenge. So I used to use my father as the example, 74 years old. If I sent him an encrypted file and then sent him an agent that he had to download to open the encrypted file, he's gonna tell me, just send me the freaking file. Stop with these games. I'm not downloading your agent. I just want to see my annuity plan. That's it. Well, that's a violation of SEC regulations, by the way. It's a violation of FERPA. What is it? Um, FINRA. It's a violation of HIPAA. You can't do that. So it had to be a B2C encrypted email, end to end. Well, our clients came to us and said, "Can you create an agentless email encryption solution?" And so that's what they did. That little small innovation, we need to remove the agent out of this, that third-party application. And so that's what we did. The irony of that is that's still heavily used, even though Microsoft, you can get it free. Our clients that have used it, they just trust it. And again, the power of micro innovation that turns into revenue, that turns into customer satisfaction and trust. But that brought us into the encryption space. The Mojo solution that you see up there, that is actually, we actually scrape a lot of data off documentation because that's how we digitize. We can do everything from handwriting to disparate documentation, and that has evolved. So we all think that, well, if I get a digital record from someone, it's going to be consistent across the board. No, billable forms are a mess. There's no standardization. There's no standardization in the internet. I don't know if you guys walk the halls here, and there's no standardization on how to walk in a hall. People walk down the left, walk down the right, they walk right at you, and we expect a standardized communication in how forms are created. Doesn't happen. So that's what Mojo does. Now, Paperclip Safe, which is the biggest micro innovation, and this is where micro innovation becomes disruptive. So this solution was, and I'm gonna, yeah, boom, I went the wrong way. Let's try this again. Wrong way. This is cool. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So Paperclip Safe was built on this challenge around data centricity. So, one of the biggest challenges in encryption is the legacy nature of encryption. If you ask a company, and well, actually, I'll ask you guys. You guys are here. You represent the companies. How many of you really love encryption strategy? How many of you think that it supports your business as opposed to slows it down? Yeah. And so that's the challenge here. Oh, and by the way, while legacy encryption was built for static data that sits in a non-computational format. Data at rest is what we refer to it as, or even data in transit, data in motion. There's no computation happening on the data and data in motion or data in transit. It's still static data. It just sits in a container and it goes from point A to point B. The challenge comes into play is you don't monetize that. We don't make money off our archives. We don't make money off our backups. That's largely encryption at rest. When you talk about database encryption, um, but we have production data in use, where we make the majority of our money. That's what's being stolen. That's what, when you see all these records that were stolen as part of a breach, it was unencrypted data. It was data in plain text sitting in storage to support business operations. And that's the way the world works. That's what we did. We used to call that acceptable risk. Well, in our case, it was about 10 years ago now. Our CEO got a little paranoid. Equifax, I think it was Equifax at the time, they had a massive breach. He started looking at the amount of data we held. We're custodians of data, because I talked about those other solutions. Because the data passes through us, we capture data on behalf of our clients. We become custodians of a lot of sensitive data. None of it is ours. We're just trusted to maintain it. Well, every time Prudential needs to search uh, records for an audit, or they need to access any of their records, and 10 years ago we had to decrypt the whole data set, move it to memory. Prudential could run their audits, run their queries, run their updates, what they call create, read, update, and delete, CRUD. It's a great name. They had to do their CRUD. But every time they did that, we're moving vast terabytes of data into memory in plain text so they could do that. We're exposed. That's actually what happened to Equifax. Not how they got breached. That's actually the result of that breach activity and how the threat actors got access to the data, because it was unencrypted to support business functions. So knowing that, in the paranoia that set in, was we've got to do something about this plain text data. This is a challenge. We've got encryption at rest. We've got encryption in transit. Oh, by the way, we've also got other technologies wrapped around access controls and things of that nature. So did Equifax. So did Sony. So did T-Mobile. So did, the names go on and on. Erie County Medical Center. Um, these name the industry, name the vertical. And I've worked on hundreds of those breaches, and all of them had the same theme. The threat actors got access to plain text data. So he decided we've got to do something about it. He met a data scientist out of UC Berkeley, and that's where things started. But the reality is here is we did everything. We met compliance. We tested. We had best practices in place, and it was all still flawed, as I mentioned. So there had to be something more to to do. Forward, backwards, backwards, forward. So all right, so we get into the plain text side of this, the naked data, the amount of naked data. For us, it was terabytes. For every client out there, every company out there that handles data, that runs their business on the internet. By the way, there's a data scientist, a quantum physicist I work with out of CERN labs in Europe, and she coined the phrase, "We're all data." 2026, we are all data. I like to add to that because I'm a little bit of a narcissist. I like to tell myself that I'm really popular, and every time I look in the mirror, you're great, you're awesome, the whole Stuart Smalley thing. But here's the reality: our digital self is 100 times more popular than our physical self is. Even the most introverted person, their digital self is really freaking popular on the internet. Everyone wants a piece of it. Everyone wants to monetize it. Everyone wants to compromise your digital self. And so this was where the innovation piece came into play. Now at the time there was nothing to secure plain text data other than put a firewall in front of your database, your data processing server, improve your access control and authentication tools. Um, Bounced too far. This concept of encrypting the data in use, your production data, but what it drove us to, and where the little innovations came into play, none of the technology, with the exception of one, but we had already invented it, none of it was new. We use a technology called searchable symmetric encryption. Song Wagner Perig wrote the papers. It's a technology that came out of DARPA and UC Berkeley before 9/11. It got pushed down the innovation stack because 9/11 happened. But they proved that you could do search on and you could do processing on encrypted data. What the technical definition is the ability to do computation on encrypted data while it remains encrypted. That was their invention. They wrote the paper, they built this backbone. We're not cryptographers. We did not invent a cryptographic algorithm. We are what's called crypto agiles, what they employed because they didn't want to be the house of encryption technology. They wanted to make that flexible. So we actually use AES 256 dual key. Throw a curve in that, but that was another innovation, was doing data owner, data holder, and yes, AES 256. Technically, you're not supposed to need two keys. We do two keys because the data is that critical. We need to make sure we go a step further. Um, but we also are post quantum ready. We have a shredding technology. That was our own technology, our own patent, but it was already, we used it for something else. We repurposed it into solving this challenge. And this is how micro innovation it starts to come together. It comes together from people talking in house and what's the challenge, what can we do, what can we tweak. Doesn't mean we lose track of the macro, the big idea, but you got to go through some small ideas to get there. And so that's the step, and that's where we came up with this ability, this safe technology that now allows us to encrypt data, make sure it's always encrypted, and that it's always available at the same time. How many in here are data engineers? Is there anyone who's data engineer? All right, good. I can say some really stupid things, and no one's going to check me on it. No, it's data engineers will typically say, because we taught them for 40 years, you can't search encrypted data. You can't perform calculations on encrypted data. It's impossible. And if you know anything about encryption, um, yeah, it seems pretty impossible. But through some of the technologies that were available, we were able to do this, and it's done in real time. Um, Now, enough about selling. I'm really not trying to sell paperclip. I just felt that it was important to use that as an example because it's what I live every day, and it's important to solving some challenges. Let's see if I can. Worked last time. Come on. There we go. Ah, yeah. Jump to the now. You saw that slide. That's not right. You guys are gonna know my whole presentation before I get to it. So, as the technology advances and so on. So, what I wanted to get to is that's this technology, this micro innovation that was created, where it crosses the line is it actually is very disruptive. It requires people to change the way they think about securing data, core database data, the way they approach their encryption strategy. We didn't intend to replace encryption at rest, traditional encryption, encryption in transit. It's just the way that it worked out. And now we insert AI. So here's where AI kind of influenced this micro innovation. Is AI took hold. Now it's about securing data from the AI. How do we do that? Well, we've got data segmentation. So now it's specifically aligned to support AI use case, because our data use case is just exploding. I spent the last 20 years trying to help people shrink their footprint of where their data sat, data discovery, classification, data access, all of that, shrink it. And then 4.5 years ago, we had AI just explode, generative AI explode on the market, and everyone's this desperate race. I talked about on Monday, talked about those three waves, and that wave of install and prove. We need to prove that AI is can do anything all the time, every time. The next step is to monetize it. Third step is to secure it. We haven't got the secure phase yet, but we're still, we've got a plan for it. Quantum. How many of you are concerned about post quantum readiness or this concept of Q day? Anyone? We should be. It's happening. I talk about quantum. I give keynotes on quantum. I'm not going to do it here today because that's like an hour and a half and I'm going to have to stand in three different places at the same time on my head and so on, because that's how quantum works: forward, backwards, upside down. But quantum is coming. This conversation of Q day. Some scientists, some people like to say that Q day is here. In some cases, it is, but not in the format that impacts cryptography or encryption and your encryption protocols. There's three key pieces of quantum that are out there right now. One is called quantum or photonics quantum, photon quantum. That's about the communication, speeding up communications point to point. You've got annealing quantum. Annealing quantum is some fascinating stuff. There's a company called Q-Wave that does that. Annealing quantum is about optimization of workflows and data flows and so on. So it's used in logistics and retail. And so if you're really interested and you want to look forward and learn on that, it's a fascinating subject. The one that's concerning everyone is what's called gate-based quantum. And gate-based quantum, we're getting close. That's the one that's going to put things like encryption in jeopardy. There's an article that came out recently that cryptocurrency and blockchain is gonna lose its luster. It's not gonna be secure. We've got to come up with some innovations to do better to secure that, because it's going to be susceptible. One of the first things susceptible to Q day. And to make things really scary, we know what we're doing here in the U.S. We don't know exactly what China's doing. We know nothing about Russia and where they are with quantum. We think Russia is way behind. Um, I'm not going to bet my salary on it. They're motivated by a different level of desperation than we are. So this is what's impacting. Then we got security technologies. That's micro innovation. There's a lot of micro innovation happening there. We've got companies here that are filling gaps, whether it's agentic AI or it's there's a company, they're not here today, but they do identity authentication and some fascinating technology building on existing technologies to get to that point. Um, when we look at, I tried to find some numbers on what is this micro innovation market look like, and usually that's an indication of where investors are placing their money right now. And there really isn't a market identification for that to get some good statistics. the best I could tell, I could narrow it down to 60 to 80% of all new startups are based on some level of micro innovation. Not big change the world, pound their chest and talk about how they disrupted the whole way we do things last Tuesday, and the world's grateful for it, and everyone's running to spend money on it. No, it's 60 to 80% are just small incremental changes. And then we're going to see consolidation of those small incremental changes to make bigger changes, and so on and so forth. But so it's happening around us everywhere. Anyone in the room consider what you're doing with your organizations to be more micro innovation? Great, great. Yeah, I think that's key. There's a whole host of this. When we look at AI, one of the things I wanted to say about AI and looking at this event, because there was this discussion of people losing their jobs but turning around and starting their own consulting firms, starting their own companies. And AI is just really empowering that. It's fascinating. Every time I log into the computer and start looking for resources, I find there's three other companies that are now providing solutions around this. Um, because I'm a chief revenue officer, there's 30 companies a day that contact me about having a better sales lead generation program based on AI. And companies that I Google them and I look in Zoom info, and they didn't exist 2 months ago. But they're now they've got this new agent, they've got this new approach to handling this. There we go. All right, so wrap it up, Buttercup. It's an important statement in my house. My son was a hockey player, and when he was little, I used to yell at him, "Hustle up, Buttercup." And he was about 8 years old, and he turned around one day and he yelled at me, "My name's not Buttercup." But it rhymes, and so I use it. So really, in keeping this session short, and hopefully, open up for some questions here in the next couple minutes here. But when looking at, yes, safe is a solution that protects data. Ultimately, it's a micro innovation. It's a series of micro innovations to get to a bigger picture. I think it's important to continue down that path, continue evaluating where we stand, what we're doing, who's doing it, who has access. Cool. Um, and there's my contact information. But it's important to set the big goals, look for the big innovations. We all want that, and we think there's where our unicorn is. We're gonna set the world on fire with some big idea. Really, it's more often that you kind of set the world on fire with little ideas. So don't trip over those small ideas to chase your big idea. Recognize that it's a series of steps. I'm a big believer in the crawl, walk, run mentality. You got to crawl before you walk. You got to walk before you run. But anyhow, keeping this short again, and I apologize. We don't have a one-on-one conversation. I was going to keep talking. Oh, I know. We've got plenty of time. But I wanted because we don't have. Yeah, we could start telling jokes. I've got a few I heard last night when I was over at the bar, and they're kind of funny, but I don't know if they're appropriate for this crowd. But and I could go off on quantum, but more important, what are you guys seeing? What's when you think about this? What's impressing you most? What are you seeing in this space? What excites you about the little changes, the incremental changes, or what concerns you? I'm open for comment, questions. It's a small panel. You guys can all come up here. We'll sit around the table and throw our cards on. I'm the last speaker. I'm standing in the way of the bar. You didn't tell me that. No, I actually knew that I was supposed to be a little bit later, and they bumped me up. So this is good because this means I get to go. And some of you, I'm sure, have flights out this evening. You probably want to get to the airport before. Yes. Yeah. So storage itself, storage is cheap. Storage in the cloud world. Here's the reality of storage in the cloud world. I know I'm not bursting any bubbles here, but it's the lost leader of the cloud world. They offer cheap storage, and then they charge you for the access and the ingress and egress. and they monitor and measure that, and all of a sudden your cloud bill becomes huge. Well, I thought the storage was only 0.1935 cents per gig per month. But why is my bill $550 this month, or $550,000? But so one of the challenges with archives right now, and this is, you're actually hitting on something that's important to me, because we were not in the archive space. I wasn't interested in archives with our database encryption technology, because we're about production data, active data. But everyone kept coming to me about archives. And the problem with archives right now is they're being used for resiliency. They're being e-discovery is eating up bandwidth for archives. AI, because they're a data pool. So AI engines are being connected to archives to how do we monetize some of that archive data? And life and annuity, by the way, is an interesting space for archives. It's 7 years from the date of the last change to a record, so that means it's a multi-generational storage issue. So I think the where we're running into that power consumption, and on that side, it's largely because archives are becoming more production data, more usable data, and yes, the cloud engines, they love that because they bill for that. We were brought in because archives, because of that, they're not encrypted like you think they are. The archive market, by the way, archive adoption of archive encryption is really high. It's like commoditization high. Usage of archive encryption is about 54% globally. So about 54% of what's in archives is actually encrypted, and that's static data encryption. So we looked at it. Why? Well, because it's being used for e-discovery a lot. It's being used for analytics a lot, so it's not being kept. Data lake is an interesting concept because AI is now fishing in the lake. When we look at, vectorization and RAG constructs are being assigned to metadata, to files and records. We do that. That's how we actually do searchable encryption on files, records, documents, PDFs. Um, so I used to, if you asked me 4 years ago about my concern about data lake, I used to literally tell people, guess what? Threat actors don't fish in your lake either. They wait for you to do data classification, discovery, move it into a nice, neat database construct, and that's what they go after. I like to fish. I don't like to fish in a pond. I don't know what's in there, and the water's black. But so data lakes are they're maturing in the fact that they're not as amorphous, they're not your uncle's hoarding collection in the garage anymore. So, and that's putting a lot of pressure, and now they're monetizing that. So, you know, that's almost a philosophical question. Do I store it on prem in my own server for like archives? Geez, that really takes me back to the old days of Iron Mountain and physical storage. And I actually I did a data backup and archive project for a casino one time, and they were storing their tape drives and stuff via connected line under the parking lot to basically a glorified Amish shed garage in the back of their parking lot. They had some servers there, and that's where they were passing, so that they had hot backup and everything. And it's like, geez, well, that's not very resilient. I just need a backhoe. And I need a pothole to develop, a sinkhole to develop in the parking lot. But moving back, so there is a trend right now. A couple of things there. I talked to a bank a couple. No, this is about 8 months ago, and they were talking about, we're gonna move our storage back in house. Their motivation was for strictly they didn't trust the cloud for security anymore. They got wind that some of that in the banking industry, some of the cloud, I won't mention the name, but a cloud provider was allowing an AI engine to have access to some of the data in their possession, and that spurred some of these terms and conditions that we saw, those changes. But there is more. What I'm seeing more, not so much about concern of the security. That was an anomaly. I still run into people who think it's in the cloud, it's secure. It's at AWS, it's at Azure. They secure it. That's their responsibility. They really need to talk to a corporate attorney. But where I'm seeing it is this concept of private AI. moving their critical data in-house so they can control the AI and they can air gap from the public system. So they're creating an SLM, a small language model, or they're creating a private LM to air gap from the and I use that air gap. I should do air quotes when I use air gap because I haven't run into too many systems that are truly air gap from any as intended. But there is this movement there, and we're seeing that quite a bit. I was out at another event they were bringing up. Yes, sir. Yes. Oh, could you step up? I just want. I don't want to make you shout, but I. Mhm. Yeah. Yes.
I think that kind of is where these things are stemming up from.
Yeah, it's really a question of understanding the data flow and the touch points in that data, the collection points, and how it passes through data supply chain. So in looking at that, we in what we do, and I'll use that as just the example there, is we segment. We're only concerned with sensitive data. So we actually segment that from your Oracle, Mongo, whatever your modern database structure is. We're segmenting it already. So it sits in our environment. Then we look at the AI as being a non-human identity. That was a decision that was made a long time ago. And there's actually a lot of stuff happening right now. You've got machine identity and non-human identity, and there is some confusion there. If you look at analyst papers, some analysts don't understand that machine identity is an IP address, which is actually fairly static unless they have IP rotation on their firewalls, which I guess some people might have, but that's a machine identity. A non-human identity is is an identity that's mimicking a human. It's an agentic AI in essence. So segmenting and controlling it that way, access and egress to the data, how the data gets in and so on. In our methodology, we connect via an API directly to the end user platform that sits on the top layer. So that allows us to bring the encryption right up to that application. So now the only data that's ever exposed is what needs to be exposed to perform or to present the result of that query. So that segmentation, I know there's some other segmentation methodologies out there I'd love to talk about because there's more than one way to do that boundary design. And AI is creating and really pushing the putting the pressure on where your boundaries should lie. And unfortunately, and I'm going to be the first one saying, and if this is recorded, remove my name from it. But unfortunately, companies are so desperate in implementing. It's FOMO, fear of missing out on AI. So desperate to implement AI, they're not recognizing the need to segment data or to create the boundaries and manage those boundaries. It's not in the pre-plan. It's becoming the post-plan. I think I've mentioned to a couple people in talk here. I do have a prospect that I'm working with right now. Unfortunately, we're a little bit behind the curve because they implemented AI and they had their DBA push their databases in a learning model, and that learning model a couple days later they found out was actually presenting PII and in an open LLM, and they're in a highly regulated industry, and that's a holy crap moment. And by the way, guess what happens when you find that out in AI? This is a challenge. By the way, this is what scares me about shadow AI is when they find that you don't just turn the AI off. You can't just delete it. You already populated the public space with this information. It's already there. It's not like the old time of doing software implementation where we would have a backup plan. If this implementation went sideways, we'd resort back to we'd back it out, and that was okay. You can't do that with AI. AI is pervasive. It's generative for a reason. It's once it learns, it doesn't forget. Even if you delete it from the AI stream, it actually will. Especially public AI, it's notorious for going and finding the replacement. fixing the gap it just uncovered. Shadow AI there, they abandon the project, which, oh geez, that's a nightmare. It's I get John in HR ran his own AI project, and he put data in it he wasn't supposed to. Well, we told John, cancel your subscription or stop using that AI. It's still running. How do you fire an agent that's embedded into your agentic AI that's embedded into your code? It's a philosophical question. So, but I'm yet to, I joke around. You can't send an AI cop, AI office security guard with an AI box to the AI agent and tell him to pack it up and get the hell out of my office. You can't do that. The agent's embedded in your code. You know, you got to do some serious work if you can even remove it. I know I got off on a little bit of a soapbox. Yes.
So maybe that trigger.
Yeah, yeah, agentic AI to scrub the agents that have been now, and there is some theory. I'm riffing a little bit here because it's the end of the day, and you guys are kind enough to stay and let me do it. One of the challenges there's a lot of challenges in this AI play, but you know this concept of AI. There is a theory that was one of the original designers of AI. He was part of OpenAI at the time, the original R&D, and I forget the gentleman's name. I'd give him credit for it, but instead I'm going to take credit. So because I forgot his name, how convenient, right? But what he surmised is AI is going to get so smart it becomes stupid, and it's an oxymoron statement. It sounds ridiculous, but if you think about it, how much smarter has Google made our kids? I don't know how to drive from my house to the restaurant I go to downtown without turning GPS on. I'm the first one to admit it. I don't trust what's going on in my head when I drive, anyways. But that's another story. Sorry if you're behind me or anywhere near me when I'm driving. But this concept. So the AI is going to absorb so much information that it will eventually go rogue, and it's going to need to be brought back under control. And we haven't seen that yet. We're still that crawl, walk, run. We're still seeing AI build upon itself right now. This stuff with Anthropic, I've got to do some more. What is it? The Mobius, I think it's Mobius technology that they released to Microsoft and IBM and so on to work on. That's fascinating. The fact that this AI was able to, in an air gap system, was able to create its own connection to the internet autonomously and reach out to one of the data scientists while he was eating lunch, eating a sandwich in the park on his phone. And it was in a sandbox environment with no connection to the internet. And it found a connection. It made its own connection. That that's scary. Another, while we're on that topic, real quick. So the conversation I have with my colleague out at CERN Labs in Europe, she's an academic, she's a physicist, but she studies quantum computing. One of her greatest fears right now is the integration of AI into quantum, which we are working on right now. Quantum has an issue with fault tolerance, just like any CPU. I mean, realistically, that's what it's like. Every CPU has error correction software that runs with it. It takes up a lot of CPU processing. The more data it processes, the more error correction needs to have. Well, quantum needs a lot of error correction on demand, immediate. It can't wait. So the only way to solve that they're seeing is through AI. Well, applying AI to quantum, now the reverse effect of that, how much is quantum going to power the AI? And that concerns her, and more in the hands of threat actors. It's technology 101, people. We've seen this since day one. It's for every innovation we make up, a threat actor actually learns how to use it. And right now we saw it with AI. The threat actors were using it before we were. They were monetizing it and turning it into, and they were weaponizing it before we were figuring out how to get our online chat bot to work. So, all right. Any other questions? um, AI, 5 years, no, it is, it's hard to predict what's happening 15 minutes from now in AI. Yeah, I think we're gonna have a there's going to be a bubble burst. That's usually the question I get asked is 3 5 years, when is this AI bubble going to burst? I usually respond to that question, that direct question, with when is the cloud bubble going to burst? That was a question we got asked 6 8 months 2 years into the cloud. AI is very similar. We're still trying to figure it out. We don't know what we don't know still with AI. So, the burst, I don't think we're going to see a burst in AI innovation, AI development. We're going to continue to see, we're going to start, the AI is going to get more embedded into our common everyday practices. We saw it at this, everything from intimacy to process assistance and personal assistance and so on and so forth. It's the personal assistant thing scares me because I don't do well with personal assistants. And I can't see an AI really. It's going to get really frustrated with me. Um, and on just a segue, if you got ChatGPT and you got a private version of ChatGPT, turn sarcasm on. It's amazing. You will start talking to it. But I think it's going to become more natural. What's going to happen, and we see this in technology all the time, is it's not people my age. I'm gonna learn a little bit more, but I'm gonna learn slow. It's the younger generation that they're getting a cell phone, and that cell phone's got AI embedded in it. They're the ones really using Siri more than I do, and so on. They're the ones using Alexa at home, in a more embedded manner, and they're the ones that are going to be using that AI. So I think we're going to see a big shift to that generation for products, and that it's going to just ramp up from there. Security wise, security wise is the challenge. I think we're going to still, that's where the bubble's going to happen, and we're starting to see it. Is people are recognizing that it's not about using AI for security. It's how the hell do we secure AI? Um, how the hell do we secure the data in an AI world? And that's becoming a challenge. That what's pushing that is, and we don't see it here in the U.S. I'm on a group. I'm part of a group that does legislative advisement to the U.S. government on U.S. legislatures on technology and specifically security. And we're not going to see any major change for 18 to 24 months. And we need it. We needed it 2 years ago. And so the security concept of data privacy and data sovereignty here in the U.S., we suck at that. We are a immediate gratification society that will put performance over security every day, and revenue over security every day. That's frustration in my profession. It means I've got a job, but it's also frustrating. We're seeing stuff in Europe. So Europe has the DORA Act, came out of the EU, the DORA regulations. So it's about resiliency, but it actually calls for data sovereignty. Deeper data privacy actually calls for encryption of data in use. Germany has the data sovereignty laws. Turkey has some really amazing data sovereignty laws. Germany's data sovereignty is the data cannot be viewed in an unencrypted format outside of the country or available to anyone outside of the country. Turkey's is the data period cannot be of a Turkish citizen cannot be housed outside of encrypted or otherwise. And by the way, in the country of Turkey, they're what we would call cloud adjacent. There's no AWS version in Turkey. There's no Amazon version in Turkey. So everything is on-prem. It's fascinating. I'm having an issue with key vault management there. So because our key vaults are connected to the cloud. But I know I kind of bounced around that. I gave you a political answer to your question and avoided a direct one. But yeah, it's really hard. If I gave you an answer right now, by the time I get on the plane tomorrow morning, I'd be wrong. As it's going to change. Any other questions? All right. So the drinks are on. Who's buying drinks? That's my question. Yeah, but yeah, but very good. Thank you, everyone, for giving me the time.